Okay, let's dive right in. We're not just flipping through some dusty old history book here. We're going way, way back to the very beginning, to the place that pretty much invented the idea of civilization itself. This is the story of Mesopotamia.
And I want to kick things off with a question for you. What if the blueprint for your life, the very structure of our cities, our laws, even how we tell time, wasn't some modern invention, but was actually drafted thousands and thousands of years ago?
So, here's how we're going to trace that blueprint. First, we'll look at how it all got started. Then we'll dive into the world's first cities and the absolute game changer that was writing. After that, we'll check out the first ever code of law, see what daily life was actually like, and finally, we'll connect all the dots to our world right now.
All right, let's get into it. Our story starts in a place the ancient Greeks would later name Mesopotamia, a truly revolutionary land of firsts that laid the foundation for, well, pretty much everything.
The name itself is a huge clue, right? It literally means land between the rivers, and this Fertile Crescent, as it's called, was like the perfect incubator for civilization. The rich soil and all that water meant people could finally stop wandering and start building. They swapped a nomadic life for permanent homes, for farming, and for the very first draft of the future.
Now this is where the blueprint really starts to take shape. Once people settled down, an idea sparked that would change the course of history: the city. But with the city came a massive new problem, and it needed a solution that was just as radical: writing.
To get a sense of how insane this was, just look at this number, 50,000 people. Before this, humans were living in tiny, scattered groups. A city like Uruk was a metropolis. It was this incredible, unprecedented explosion of people, of new ideas, and a whole lot of new challenges.
And right at the heart of this new urban world was the ziggurat, a giant, stepped temple reaching for the sky. Now, this wasn't just a church, no way. Think of it as the city's command center. It was the religious hub, the central bank, the grain storage facility, and the main social gathering spot, all rolled into one massive building.
But this brings up a huge question, right? You've got tens of thousands of people. You've got all this grain, trade, taxes to deal with. How in the world do you keep track of it all? Human memory alone just can't handle that kind of complexity.
The answer was cuneiform. And what's absolutely fascinating is that writing wasn't invented for poetry or epic stories. It was invented for something way more practical: accounting. Seriously, think about what that means. One of the greatest intellectual achievements in all of human history wasn't born from art, but from the urgent need to manage a growing economy.
And the technology behind it was brilliantly simple. You'd just take a chunk of wet clay, flatten it into a tablet, then you'd take a reed stylus, kind of like a pen, and press these distinct little wedge-shaped marks into the clay. When you were done, you just bake the tablet in the sun, and boom, a permanent record.
Okay, so you have cities and you have a way to write things down, but the blueprint needs another layer. You need a system of rules to make sure this complicated new society doesn't just collapse into total chaos.
You see, as empires like Babylon started swallowing up more and more territory, a new problem popped up. Justice was totally random. It could depend on the whim of a local governor or the mood of a priest. King Hammurabi saw that this was a recipe for disaster. If his empire was going to be stable, justice had to be consistent and predictable.
His solution was this: the Code of Hammurabi. We're talking 282 laws carved into a massive stone pillar and placed right in the public square for everyone to see. And it covered everything from business deals and family drama to professional mistakes and violent crimes.
The most famous principle, of course, is an eye for an eye. And yeah, that sounds incredibly harsh to us today. But for its time, the idea behind it was revolutionary. It established the principle of proportional justice. The punishment should actually fit the crime. It was a huge leap away from just endless cycles of revenge.
But, and this is a really crucial point, justice wasn't blind. This cable shows it perfectly. If a nobleman struck another nobleman, it was an eye for an eye. But if that same nobleman struck a commoner, he just had to pay a fine. So your social status directly determined your rights under the law.
So now that we've got the big structures in place, the cities and the laws, let's zoom in on the blueprint for daily life. Let's look at the incredible innovations that shaped a world for the average Mesopotamian.
I mean, just think about this for a second. The wheel, which completely transformed transportation and labor. The sailboat, which opened up the world to trade. The idea of dividing an hour into 60 minutes, that came from their base 60 counting system, something we still use every single day to tell time. The 12-month calendar. These aren't just ancient trivia, they are foundational technologies that are still hardwired into how we live.
And everyday life was lived within a very rigid social pyramid. At the very, very top, you had a tiny elite of rulers and priests. Below them were the educated folks, the scribes and merchants. But the vast majority of people, the huge base of the pyramid, were farmers and laborers. And at the very bottom, a large population of slaves. This strict structure was seen as absolutely essential to keep the whole thing running.
So, let's bring all of this together. These weren't just a bunch of random, isolated inventions. They were all interconnected parts of a system, a blueprint for civilization that we have inherited. We are still, in many ways, living inside that blueprint today.
Sure, the technology has changed dramatically, but the fundamental concepts, they're still here. Cuneiform on clay tablets has become emails on servers, but the basic purpose, recording and sharing information, is identical. The ziggurat, that economic and symbolic heart of the city, has been replaced by skyscrapers as our financial hubs. And Hammurabi's code, carved on a giant stone, has evolved into vast legal databases stored in the cloud.
And that leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. The Mesopotamians created a blueprint that shaped humanity for thousands of years. It really makes you wonder, 5,000 years from now, what parts of our world, our digital lives, our global society, our values, will people look back on as the foundational blueprint that we're all designing right here, right now?